Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, he was credited with defending the PDP and its presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, during the 2023 presidential election, and even boosting Mr. Abubakar's chances of winning that election in the face of the divisions within the party that were apparent to everyone as a result of the Nyesom Wike factor. But then Daniel Bwala suddenly made an about face, as some critics see it. Soon after Mr. Abubakar and the PDP lost the supermajority Mr. Bwala had confidently predicted they would win, and President Tinubu and the APC went almost invincibly on course to victory. And now Mr. Bwala has become Mr. Tinubu's unofficial spokesman, holding much publicized meetings with the president, doing the media rounds and pontificating on the president's behalf. Expectedly, with the kind of attention Mr. Bwala has been getting, there are many who are gunning for him, even as he himself has taken to enthusiastically hitting out at all those he perceives to be President Tinubu's political opponents. And the lawyer and public policy analyst, Dr. Daniel Bwala, joins me now in the studio. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're going to get to a little bit of that, but let's start with the very topical issue of the suspended strike, of which you have spoken a lot about in the last day or so. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think I welcome the idea of a truce, between the federal government and the workers, the labor union, because I think strategically, every labor union will want to have an inch. What they have achieved in the last 1 or 2 days is that the president or the government has agreed that 60,000 is not enough. So that in itself is an achievement.
Do you think it's the labor unions? I mean, the strike was a fairly strong message that the labor union sent out, that they are not to be trifled with. I mean,
I will have a different opinion on that, because unionism, labor unionism, usually work very strongly in climate where, to a large extent, there is a self-sufficiency, where the people are doing well. When you go to countries where there is extreme poverty, as a labor union, you have to be very strategic, or else you lose the legitimacy before the people. So my thing is, if the labor union had continued with this strike, I predicted the lifespan of this strike would have been 4 or 5 days, after which the Nigerian workers and then other members of the society might have to shelve the idea of strike and have to go to look for what to eat and survive.
Right. So that's an interesting point. So you're saying that the message they were sending out, which is one of, we're strong, we can bring the country down, so don't mess with us, that's not likely to make their star flourish with the public. That it's likely to increase wariness. In other words, it won't make them popular.
You remember in the UK, when labor union go on strike, they used to pay what they call strike pay. So all members of the labor union are entitled to about £50. In fact, in some cases, £70 for every day of the strike. So that way you get reinvigorated, you get energized to push. But in Africa, in Nigeria especially, they don't have anything. So there's a limit to which you can go with this strike, that it then begins to come back and hold yourself. But I think that there is, the good thing about it all is that President Bola Tinubu has a disposition that demonstrates that he wants to negotiate. He has never used the instrument of coercion in any shape, way or form, even in the face of outright violation of the law.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because you're a lawyer. The government at the outset tried to use the law at one point to try to sort of, prevent the strike from going ahead. But it is the legal right of workers to withdraw their services, isn't it?
Yes, it is, as long as the withdrawal of the service is consistent with the law. So the legislation...
Yeah, but the impression that's given is that the law is applied whenever it doesn't suit the government. And suddenly it becomes... I mean, I know there's a time frame within which you have to say, declare that you're going on strike and blah, blah, blah. But, in most countries, that is not actually strictly followed.
But
I mean,
England
as long as you've informed the police that you're going to go on strike and the police doesn't see anything wrong. In other words, the police can make that determination, not strictly from a written piece of paper that you call the law, but from whether or not the circumstances.
That is what you're speaking about, is protest.
Allow for that to happen.
That's protest.
Yeah.
But industrial action has a procedure, because the conduct of both parties is governed by law. In the case of protest, it is the Constitution. You have a right of expression, and that you do not need the permission of the police to express your discontent or whatever is the
but it's a form of protest.
No, but this
against the minimum wage.
Yes, but because you are recruited, for example, in England, if you don't follow the procedure and you launch into action, two things happen. One, you might not be entitled to your wage, and two, your employer may have the right to fire you without you asking.
Yeah, but the word is may.
Because the exercise
so
of
obviously it has to be, the circumstances have to be assessed.
No, it's the exercise of discretion of the employer. I mean, if you set rules for us, anybody who violates the rule, and it is the advantage of the strong person. But the president wants what the labor union want for the Nigerian people.
So generally speaking, the principle of a higher minimum wage, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong.
Because there are some who have suggested, who are really passionate about this, and they've said that perhaps Nigerian lawmakers and political leaders should also be on minimum wage to experience what ordinary Nigerians are experiencing.
It's an interesting argument, but if the civil populace know the power that they already have within the framework of the Constitution, they can always recall a lawmaker that misbehaves in terms of misappropriation of funds. Let me tell you something, Mr. Charles, and by extension the Nigerian people. Always a misconception with the Nigerian people as regards civil servant and the lawmakers. I'm not making a case for them. I don't speak for them.
Yeah, of course.
Even though I admire that place, I once ran to become a senator because I felt that you can in fact change when you are in the parliament.
Yes, I remember when you ran for office.
For Senate. But you see, a civil servant who is recruited by the civil service rules will stay for 35 years, all things being equal, before he retires. A lawmaker stays for 4 years. Renewable, of course, if he gets re-elected, but the term is 4 years. One is recruitment, the other one is election. And anywhere in the world, when elected officers are elected into offices, there are certain privileges that accompany that. But when people talk about this 36 million for senators or 22 for House of Reps, they fail to realize that some of the money fundamentally that the senator gets in terms of this volume is from the constituency.
Yeah.
I said that because in 2018, I visited Senator John Thune, who then was the chairman, Senate Committee, Commerce, United States Congress, in his constituency. It's a functional office where you have a lot of offices, you have staffers. And that is also the place where...
So that's what that money is for.
That is what it is for.
Right, but they don't use it for
But they don't use it. Then the ICPC, I remember in the administration of President Bwala at some point, were tasked to monitor the implementation of constituency project. They were supposed to also expand that work to look at the tracking of the monies meant for the constituency development and the offices. So this is one fact. But in terms of cars that the lawmakers get, again, like I said, it's for 4 years. That lawmaker doesn't get it for 35 years. But it is arguable that we can say, given the circumstance, people should begin to cut the cost of governance. The argument that lawmakers should take minimum wage, I don't kick against it. Because as a matter of fact, the world over, most advanced democracies, the public officers don't get as much as what we get in the third world.
Yeah.
So, but the general populace, that's why constitutional review process is coming. Come out and participate. In the 10th Assembly, Senate, I was privileged to be the head of the constitutional brooding in the office of the DSP. I remember when we sent out information for people to submit memoranda. Not too many people participated. In fact, my primary
they don't understand the process.
Exactly.
In most cases.
In lawmaking process, if you don't come in public engagement and then push for your point, by the time it becomes a law, people then start crying.
Yeah, but there's so many reasons why. I mean, there's the literacy levels, there's all kinds of, there's poverty.
Loss of confidence.
There's issue of, how do I leave my daily bread that I'm pursuing and go after, those kinds of things. But obviously you're very interested in politics. I mean, that is something we've seen over time. So let's turn to the politics of things and your role in it. Have you now completely shifted gears from supporting Atiku Abubakar to throwing your lot in with President Tinubu?
I am supporting, well, it was nice and it's an experience that I cherish.
Well, the party is over, basically, for,
I mean,
for Mr. Atiku.
It was nice that I supported the Vice President, former Vice President Atiku, and for the period I supported him, I gave my all.
Yeah, and you did a good job.
You know, but when I made a decision to support President Bwala, it's just owing to the fact that the elections are over. We all know the problems we're in. And if you're privileged to have an attention of somebody who is now the sitting president, who didn't need you in the first place, but he felt that you have something to offer and say, come be a part of what we're doing in this government. Let us see how we, you know, support a good governance. I feel it's an honor. Don't forget that I was a loyalist before I changed party and I went to Atiku. So it is not a situation of going back to somebody you don't know. I've always believed in him. You know, I've always believed in him.
But I mean, it was the principle, though, wasn't it? That you know, that you left the party on your convictions.
Correct.
I mean, why have those convictions changed? Because I mean, President Tinubu was the candidate.
Right.
He wasn't president at the time.
He was
the candidate, and you left because of a Muslim.
Yeah. So
why have you now changed? Because they are now the substantive Muslim ticket in Asoro.
Yes, but there is a premise, right? There is this thing we call in academia, facts change opinion, unless you have personal grudges against someone. In our argument of law, when you are in court, you argue, superior argument prevails.
Yeah, but you didn't say that when you were sitting here at the time.
What I said was...
we got the first interview when you left.
And what I said was just one.
Right.
I decided to change because I couldn't support the Muslim ticket.
Yeah.
Why was I that vociferous? Because I felt that a same-faith ticket is most likely going to disenfranchise those who are not represented by the ticket. And you know, if you look at history, we are coming from history. So it's natural for you to have that kind of fear. But guess what? When President Bola Tinubu became president, our own fears were melted away. Because right now, and you can fact check that, President Bola Tinubu's administration has provided more opportunities for the minorities than any administration since 1990.
Yeah, but you didn't say at the time that you were going to, that there was no provision for any other sort of action on your part beyond the fact that you had made a decision based on your conviction.
No, but that's a premise. We decide based on conviction. So why was I convinced that I couldn't support that? There must be a premise. The premise is because, okay, government is about interest and representation. Politics, there's no permanent friend and there's no permanent enemy, that is permanent interest. Collectively under democracy, we send our representatives in the National Assembly to represent us. To do what? To represent our interests, protect our right, make sure that there is equal opportunity on us.
Right.
That's the whole essence. So when I made that decision, it was with the belief that the same-faith ticket is likely going to disenfranchise my people. And don't forget.
And now you're convinced that it hasn't.
I know, not just that it hasn't, but President Bola Tinubu is providing opportunity for the Christian minorities in the north and the minorities generally.
So is it conceivable that you may return to the PDP?
No, I'm not.
At some point, if you change, I mean, you see a different sort of approach that they're taking.
Generally in life, because politics is not religion. You know, it's in religion you will say, I die here.
Right.
But in politics, the basis for which people come together, it's no longer the basis for which they are staying. I'll give you an instance. If President Bola Tinubu will say, thank you, Bwala, but I don't need your support. I don't have the basis to stay there.
Yeah, I understand that. But Secondly, but people tend to, I mean, you're a very well-educated, very well-exposed person. And one would think that you would be driven more by something close to ideology.
That is what I have been doing.
Which is not something you kind of flip-flop over.
You can flip-flop on ideology, you can flip-flop on principles. As a matter of fact,
you can flip-flop.
Anybody can flip-flop. Look at it this way.
Right.
Is politics a religion? No. Was politics initiated in Nigeria? Certainly no. The advanced democracies that brought to us, what is happening? Donald Trump became a United States president as a Republican, but he started as a Democrat. As a matter of fact, there is this lady.
Well, I doubt if Donald Trump is the best example
Okay,
of someone who has fidelity to ideology.
But it was reported that through his administration, they had a very strong economy.
Anyway, look, let's not get bogged down in that. I mean, let me ask you this. What do you make of what's going on in the two other political parties, the PDP and Labour?
Well, I don't think that there is anything lively, going on there. And the reason is simply because both parties are fragmented at the moment.
Right.
Both parties seem not to have a direction at the moment. It is to the advantage of the All Progressives Congress, because you ordinarily will not want your competitors to be strong enough. Even the much touted merger they are talking about is a myth.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because they're talking about creating an alliance or a coalition or a merger, to mount a challenge against the APC in 2027. Is that sort of thing likely to be attractive to you as a politician?
Not at all. The only thing that will make me withdraw my support for President Bwala Tinubu is if President Bwala Tinubu goes against the Constitution of Nigeria and goes against democratic ideals. And I do not see that happen, because President Bwala Tinubu is on course. He is redefining the structure of our foundation and economy. And I know that the decisions are hard, but they are definitely decisions that are going to work at the end of the day.
Okay, well, President,
for the political parties, I know that merger will not work, because for merger to work, that will produce one person as a candidate, there has to be a unanimity of purpose in terms of somebody coming down. The obedience have made it plain. Any merger that Peter Obi will not be the candidate, they are not in it. And of course, you know that former Vice President Atiku had recently said that he's going to run for office as long as he has health and life. So that is, I think, a conclusive proof that it will not come. For Peter Obi and Labour, the trouble they have is that there is a problem of leadership and redefining ideology. Peter Obi is a capitalist. There is no scintilla of drop in the bloodstream of Peter Obi that suggests anything that has to do with labor unionism. But of course, it is his right in politics to get political party as a means to attaining power. So he will continue to have an issues. I was telling my friend today, a friend of mine who is an obedient, and he said, we like the strike that is going. The government will have to do what is right. I said, let me tell you, my brother, Alex Oti is the only governor on the platform of Labour Party. Alex Oti has not been able to pay 30,000 minimum wage. The Labour Union went and met him 2 weeks ago, and we're begging him, please pay the 30. So it is more than politics, I told the person. It is about governance. And we have to look at it from this point of view. My thing is, it is too early to start political calculation and movement, because government has to show governance and democracy.
Right, but the fact is that you would find yourself without any problems able to move from one thing to the other if you felt convinced that at that material time that was what was important to you from a political point of view.
Definitely. That is the crux of not just democracy, but freedom of the human person.
Yeah.
And the Constitution support that.
So President Tinubu, we've just got about maybe a couple of minutes left. President Tinubu has just marked 1 year in office.
Right.
Do you share the widespread pessimism and dissatisfaction about the Nigerian economy that's fueling so much frustration across this country?
So this way. The height of the skyscraper is determined by the depth of the foundation. Unfortunately, foundational work are not often seen in the surface. What President Bwala Tinubu is doing, what he has done over the last 12 months, and he continues to do, is the foundation laying. And these are not the things that the people will see. The Nigerian, he inherited a dead economy. And because he succeeded a president from the same party, he doesn't want to be seen to be complaining. You have heard him over and over saying, I accept, but I inherited the liability and the asset. What I quite appreciate about President Bwala Tinubu is that after 1 year, he has decided, because if you look at Section 5, he's the president that executes. So if his ministers fail, it's as good as saying he failed. And he knows that the Nigerian people will point accusing finger at him if nothing works. So he decided to introduce what previous government have not been doing, which is to assess the ministers. If you are not performing, I'm going to replace you with someone that is going to perform. Because obviously, whether I succeed or not is determined by the hands and legs and everything that I have across. And the performance indicators that he has set out is quite clear. Even the engagement of the Nigerian people to give their input is quite welcoming. So while others may argue that the situation is worse, I will argue that it is half full. They are saying it's half empty. And half full because foundation has been, the foundation is being laid for a better Nigeria.
Okay. Yeah. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed for coming in. It's always brilliant talking with you. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer and public policy analyst. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.